Greetings. This is episode 1 of Why Do We Teach? And in this episode, we will be discussing chapter 1 of Classroom Assessments for Student Success. And in this podcast, I have some fellow members of mine named Adenike and Jalen, and we will all be discussing overall points from this chapter. Some of the objectives we will discuss in this episode are: know how classroom assessments fit into the big picture of your job as a teacher. 2, become familiar with the guiding principles for accuracy and effective use that underpin sound classroom assessment practice. 3, understand relationships among students' motivation, success at learning, and assessments. So now we'll move forward into the next part, which is the summary section. And overall, objective 1 is to know how the classroom assessment fits into the big picture of your job as a teacher. Now, while reading this text, I did notice some key points that kind of discuss this objective. So I just kind of want to talk about how it mentions in the chapter how classroom assessments are essential to a student and teacher success. It stems from proper preparation before the lecture to the students. So pretty much overall, there are some key things that need to be done in the classroom assessment before displaying that to your students. And this can be done by ensuring the quality of the lesson and instructions are valid. And according to the text, teachers are learning and developing classroom assessments while teaching. So this is a hands-on overall experience. And that's, like I said, being done through what they experience and their current students who are in their classroom now, and also through their fellow teacher colleagues. There needs to be an accurate test and assignments to measure a student's learning and examine assessments for their purpose to assure they will show the current results. Also, reliability is key to a classroom assessment. Teachers should be reflecting on a scale or scores overall to see if their students are developing. There should be some type of display to track a student's success. There are 4 main components of a classroom assessment. Teachers should ensure they complete all of them, and all 4 of them are target, design, communication, and student involvement. And those are very key and essential. And if you properly influence and develop these components, you will have a successful classroom assessment. Also, consider assessments more than just grade checking. Assessments can show where a students need improvement and also show their educational development over time. So it can show overall how what you're teaching in a lecture is progressing or not. Also, a teacher should allow students to see their assessments to help change their students' perspective or narrative on assessments as a way of self-improvement or self-reconstruction, not viewed as a negative way. I think sometimes students can project that as, oh, if I did bad on this test, I'm not doing good at all, like I'm a failure. That's not the case. I think there needs to be a more narrative to change that mindset, not only for the students, but for the teachers as well, that, there's a way to track this through monitoring and make sure that students are progressing, not necessarily students are using these tests as a way of showing their downfall.
Hey, I am Adenike Irby-Shabazz, and I am a biology concentration. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about is going to be under the science side. What I wanted to discuss today was about how assessments are great tools to measure a student's mastery of the material. Of course, though, we have to make sure that it is accurate and appropriate. So what does that look like? If I am teaching my students about water molecules and I'm getting into the science of it, how it's 2 hydrogens and an oxygen, on the assessment, I should not be talking about the water cycle and how water goes from liquid to gas to solid. Like, that is not at all what the assessment should be on. So we have to make sure that what we're testing is aligned with what we actually taught. So that's actually the first point. That's the first way that we actually can ensure that assessments are accurate and appropriate, is based off the alignment, making sure that it actually matches. This way we can actually make valid inferences on whether or not our students have mastery of the material. For an example, it's like, what specifically are we learning and how deep of an understanding are we going? So to even piggyback off the H2O, okay, yes, I'm teaching you about two hydrogens and an oxygen, but do you just need to understand that oxygen just needs two friends in order to bind and be happy? Or am I going to get into the meat and potatoes of like, no, oxygen has 6 valence electrons, but it would like 8 in order to be happy, and hydrogen has an extra one, so we need 2 of them so that hydrogen can be happy, and then hydrogen can be happy because now it gets to share, you know what I mean? Like, how deep of an understanding are we going? Or can I just say, oh no, it just needs 2 friends, and these 2 friends look like a Mickey Mouse, and so how deep are we actually trying to go? But that we can even take that further to the second point of, okay, let's make sure that we are not being biased or distorting. Like, don't fudge the data. So if I got as deep as the amount of electrons on the exam, I should not be just asking you, okay, so why does water look like Mickey Mouse? Like, because yes, we know there's 2 oxygens, so that might be on the easier side, like if you're just trying to make sure that there's an easy question on there. But at the end, it's not really going to lead to an accurate understanding, because we went a lot deeper than that. We should be able to tell me a little bit more than just, oh yeah, it looks like Mickey Mouse because of XYZ. Or excuse me, you should be able to tell me XYZ, not just, oh yes, water looks like Mickey Mouse. And then the last point of how to make sure that assessments are appropriate and accurate is intended use. Okay, is this assessment just so that I can see that they're understanding? Is it summative or is it formative? If it's formative, then it's just, oh, okay, do you understand what we're talking about right now? But if it's summative, it's like, okay, now what are we talking about right now? Do you understand what we have talked about, and how well do you understand it? So making sure that we understand exactly what these assessments are being used for allows them to actually show a clearer picture. So what exactly are we looking for, if that makes sense?
Hi, my name is Jalen. Based on my objective, in my opinion, I think good assessments make students feel more accomplished or successful, which can lead to them being more fired up or wanting to do better to learn more. This chapter also shared that when you do something right through effective feedback, it encourages them to want to do better and get better over time. I also believe in giving them control over their own success, over their own learning, And with giving them control of their own learning, it gives them control over their own success. So setting goals for them is really important, especially in PE class. We have goals per grade level. And we try to reach those goals, for example, in units. So, for example, basketball dribbling, we're trying to reach a goal of dribbling under control. If we can reach that goal with effective feedback through my assessments, and it encourages them, and we have reward systems. But really, I really think good assessments is really effective. Now, while everybody's dribbling around the court, I tend to walk around and check on them and give verbal cues or thumbs up and thumbs down. Also, encouraging their small wins, like don't always focus on what they didn't get right. Focus on what they are getting right, and notice that they're actually trying to get better, and that they recognize that you are seeing them try. Because if you just always focus on the negative, they're just always going to give you their negative effort. Like, they're not going to give you their best effort. They're going to feel like, I'm not doing it right this time, so why would I even try? So I believe that praising them with small wins really matter. Really trying, because that builds momentum for them to keep trying. Also, poor feedback or poor assessments can discourage the child. So, for example, one time I was walking around the gym and I put a thumbs down instead of a thumbs sideways. And the student got discouraged and they were looking like, what, why? And I was trying to explain to them that was the wrong technique. But poor assessments can affect both the teacher and the student, because when I gave the poor assessment, the child gave up. And on my part, I feel like I failed, and I didn't really encourage their best effort. I didn't set them up for success for that one. So giving good feedback and giving them a half thumb, which is almost there but not quite there, but you're almost there, it can give them a little bit of encouragement that I want them to have, and not just plain thumbs down, or just putting in grades in the grade book saying that they didn't even try, or having poor assessments by not giving them feedback really sets them up to fail. So I try to give good feedback through basketball dribbling. I try to show them the technique and verbal cues, good job, change your technique, work on this, work on that. And I try to set goals for them. Setting goals is really the main goal. Setting goals really motivates them, and having a reward, not reward system, but like a, something they can look forward to at reaching that goal. They really like that. It motivates them. And also when I assess students with thumbs up or like good job, verbal cues, and I see others paying attention to how I'm doing it, and they learn from each other. So if one person's doing it wrong and they see the assessment that I gave them based on halfway there, a good job, they'll change. But that's what I got from the chapter. From the objective.
So now that we kind of as a group collectively, me and my members have discussed pretty much overall the objectives of this chapter, I think it's important for us to discuss the overall critical reflection in this chapter reading. And for me, I want to discuss kind of which ideas in this chapter that I personally find most convincing or useful, and just overall why. So what I've noticed that really stuck out to me is in the reading, as specifically on page 12, which is kind of titled, that summary is goal orientation and the connection to the assessments. And pretty much it discussed how teachers must have their own established goals or assessments for their class to achieve before lecturing, by creating objectives for the students first. Otherwise, students will believe their only objectives is to complete an assignment for its grade. That's it. And there's many deeper understanding of learning development and conclusion needed, and referring back to the effective communication with the students. And the reason why I find this point to be really useful is because in the future, it is the change the idea or perspective for students to changing pretty much their overall ego. Their mindset is, oh, well, the only reason I'm here is to take a test and get a grade. No, there's a bigger picture to learning and teaching itself. You're here to have a deeper understanding of your lecture. You may learn something deeper than just what's on the test, and that's done through creating that proper assessment as a teacher for your students to understand and comprehend. You're not just there for a grade. And teachers are more than just graders. So I really feel like that was a very key point that really stuck out to me. And I do think that'll be useful overall for teachers in general in the future. We're more than just a teacher, and you're there to assess students, but as well as students need to understand that, you're not just there just to receive a grade. You're there to learn something overall, regardless if your grade is a C or an A. You're there for a bigger picture. And it's not a competition of who got the better grade and who did better on the assignment. It's overall what you take in from the day. And that stems back from the assessments that were discussed in this chapter, making sure that overall you're looking at the educational development. The educational development overall is the key. Outlining and researching, keeping up updated reports on how your students are doing and monitoring their success over time in your class, but also allowing students to know what the objective is going to be in your class from the beginning, so they have a outline in their head of what's to be expected in this course or in this class. And I think that is very much key. And so I'm going to pass on the baton to my next member to go over their critical reflection.
One reflection point I really wanted to hit on was that I agree that assessments are needed. It is an excellent way to determine mastery, but not the only way. I feel like one thing that I disagree on is specifically that assessments are the best way to test mastery. It is the easiest way because we can get a quantitative number behind it all. But I think there are other ways. Like in the case of science, we have projects, we have labs, we have case studies that can all test mastery, assuming that the questions that are being asked along with it are actually looking for more understanding, making sure that we can connect the dot. So if I were to do a case study on the water molecules, or a lab on the water molecules, or probably a case study of just like, okay, a scientist was looking at water and they decided to add more hydrogen to it, but nothing happened. How come nothing happened? Oh, because oxygen is already happy with the two hydrogen molecules that it's attached to. Adding more hydrogen would not push them to move any other way. You see what I'm saying? So do that case study, and going through it with the class or just giving it to them and doing group work would be an excellent way to still be able to test mastery without having it to be a formal assessment. With that being said, I also believe that exams, if we're going to give them, they should be more open-ended questions. It should not be strictly multiple choice, because multiple choice leads to more guesswork. You can assume that two answers are wrong and then just kind of guess whichever one's correct. So just to continue with the H2O, if I asked you what does H2O stand for, and I had helium, I could have helium and oxygen. I could have hilarious and hilarious and overbearing. Like I can just have like some silly answers, and it's just like and then of course the correct answer of hydrogen and oxygen. Well, you would know those two silly answers are wrong, and then you just have to remember, oh well, was it helium or was it hydrogen? Probably hydrogen. So I could have a student who does not know at all that water is hydrogen and oxygen, but be able to guess that this is the correct answer, because you know what, she never said helium. She said nothing about helium this whole week, so that can't be the right answer. Does that make sense? So yes, that's what I believe. I believe that assessments are completely 100% necessary. It makes it an easy way to be able to test and see where your students are. But I think there are other ways that can also show you that also takes a lot of the pressure off of assessments, because when a student, like the article or like the chapter was saying, when assessments are the main way and that's what we're pushing down their throats, that is often where they get their confidence in. It's like if they're doing well on tests and they're fine, but some students have reading disabilities, and some students didn't have time to study, and so there are different situations that might lead to a better test taker. And then usually when a student loses confidence, and they can downfall. So it's nice to have other ways that they can show that they understand without it being a structured, formal assessment.
For my occupation and for my position as a PE teacher, elementary PE teacher, the best way and a useful way for me to assess my students is to do verbal checks and actual thumbs up, thumb or hand cues, if that makes sense. Doing a thumbs up or a thumbs sideways. Thumbs up means you're doing great, keep it up. Thumb sideways is we're not quite doing it right, so we're gonna keep trying, but you're almost there, but you're not all the way there. So we're just here. This is a quick way for me to check and give feedback to students while they're still moving around and still active, because we're constantly doing stuff, constantly. And I don't have time all the time just to stop and look at every single person at the same time. Unless it's like more than like 5 kids not dribbling right, then I have to stop the lesson and redo it, re-demonstrate it for everybody. Kids can also do their own self-assessing while doing the activities while I assess them too as well with the thumb cues. And I also notice when I give one feedback to one student, I see other students paying attention to what I'm saying to that student, and they tend to want to change their technique or whatever they're doing. So for example, if I get on one student about changing his technique of how he's supposed to dribble the ball with his fingertips instead of his palms, and his friends around him will change theirs too before I assess them. Like hurry up, did you see me talk to Johnny? Like, fix it. So that's really good, and I like how they look at feedback from others. Right now we're on the dribbling lesson, basketball dribbling lesson. So giving quick verbal cues is good for me while everybody's dribbling. After I taught the technique and after I did the I do, and it's time for them to do the we do. I mean, not the we do. It's time for them to do the you do. I'm sorry. I like to walk around and look at everybody dribble to make sure we're all on the same page. But that's a great way for me, instead of just everybody stop. Let me look at you. Dribble separately. So I like to walk around and say, good job, great technique, keep working. We're going to keep doing this until we get it, y'all. It's okay. Some of them get discouraged, so I will try my best, or I do try my best to not make them feel discouraged. But I do like the idea of verbal cues and hand signals, because they understand both, and it's very on the spot, so I do like that. It has to last for a good 10 seconds so everybody can look at me, but that is the way that I can use assessments in PE class.
The last reflection point that I wanted to touch on was I almost feel like that we shouldn't base our lessons based off of assessments. I most definitely understand where that could be beneficial in the sense of, when we have a assessment ready and we know that's what we're testing on, then we know exactly which objectives to hit on what days, how to make it flow. Like, I understand how that could make the lesson planning process a lot easier when you already know exactly what it is, but we also already have our objectives. We have our standards. We already know what we have to hit on. So we don't necessarily need a assessment to know what we have to teach about. I also feel like it gets a little bit too rigid that way. Which, granted, lesson planning would help you add in wiggle room, because to my next point, without that wiggle room, if a student does ask me a deeper question, do I have time to go into that deeper question? Do I just leave it as, oh, you'll learn that later, when very well possible, they might learn it later, but they'll always have that question in their mind, or you can look that up, or we can talk about it later. Like, I understand, but I am most definitely a person that if a question is asked, I'm like, ooh, yeah, let's get into it. And then I could accidentally, which, my fault, but I could then accidentally go off on this tangent, and then we actually miss out on 10 minutes of instruction, and now that class is behind. When if we did not base everything off assessments, and instead, after the week went on and we figured out what we talked about and everything, then we look at our formative assessments, and we can see, okay, where these students had the best understanding. Then we can make a summative assessment and then do a review based off what we already know that they were strong on versus, and also making sure we hit the points of like, okay, they didn't really understand that. We did the review. Let's see if they got it now. And then that's what we base our final assessments on. I hope that makes sense. But I guess either way, you would still have to base your, wouldn't have to base your lessons on even the formative assessments. You just have a formative assessment. Like, okay, I know we're going to talk about X, Y, Z in these lessons, and then here. But like I said, I most definitely see the value in doing the assessment first and then making the lesson plan. I absolutely agree with it. Let me say this. I understand it. I won't say I agree on it. I know I just did. I understand it, and I agree with that is the easiest way to lesson plan. Absolutely. I did it. It is the easiest, but I feel like that leaves less room for, I guess it really just all depends on whether or not you're planning for the summative versus the formative. Because if you're planning for the summative, then I don't agree with that. But if you plan for the formative and then based off your formative, you then make the summative, then I agree with that. Does that make sense? I hope so.
Based off Chapter 1's objectives and reflections, and the actual information stored in the chapter, I took away some key major points. Number 1, assessments are great as long as they are accurate, they are appropriate, and align with the targets or standards that the teacher has. Otherwise, it's not useful and it's not impactful. Is the teacher just looking for knowledge of the skill, mastery, or understanding? Number 2, class assessments are essential to both the student and the teacher. Having effective assessments for the students can give them an understanding of what they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to do it. Constantly redirecting them of how to do things. Like for me, dribbling. Telling them not to use their palm while dribbling, but use their fingertips. And they understand, like, oh, I'm sorry, Miss Little. I was using my palms the whole time. I'll go back and I'll redo it and use my fingertips. That is a good assessment. Versus me putting the thumbs down and they just giving up and walking away and sitting down on the floor. So in that, I have that it's only effective with proper preparation before class and reading of the material. Because if I don't study, I can't be effective. I can't be an effective teacher for them. If I don't study the lesson myself, I can't properly show them how to do it. Step number 3, or idea number 3, assessments are not just a test, but tools for both the student and the teacher. In PE, in the area of PE, I've also learned that student involvement assessments also motivates them to work harder and do better. So in PE, we have jump rope challenges, we have basketball challenges, we have all types of challenges. And with those challenges, I have to set goals. And so once they reach that goal, it just motivates them, and you gotta have a good reward for them. Like if Mrs. Jones' first grade class passed their jump rope challenge, then they'll get an ice cream party. So having that objective for them and that goal of them really helps them, like, okay, I want to meet this goal, I want to try. And that also ties into them having control over their own learning. Like once they realize that they can do it and they can meet that goal of doing 100 jumping jacks, and it really helps them encourage each other and themselves. So that I think that's really effective.